whether I wanted to believe it, whether I was too young to understand it, whether I was too naive to accept it. Everything Frank said was the truth.
Welcome to Philly Soundcast number 8. I'm Eddie Caiazzo, and along with Doug Schaub, we're bringing you the musical tales originating in and passing through the city of brotherly love. If you're a drummer, Frank Zappa, Jeff Beck fan, or listen to classic rock, pop, jazz, and free-form improv music, you will more than likely know the name Terry Bozzio. Terry got his professional start in the late 60s, early 70s, before making a name for himself as a world-class drummer and being recruited by Frank Zappa in 1975. You'll hear the stories about his early days, Terry's influences, and how most of us are not living the way we could thanks to the so-called norm of the world and being told, no, you can't do that in life. It's a fascinating talk with one of the premier drummers in the world. Here's Doug Schaub and his conversation with Terry Bozzio.
Today we're talking with Terry Bozzio, a world-renowned American drummer, best known for his work as a member of Missing Persons, The Knack, Frank Zappa. There's a list that goes on and on here. Let me first welcome you to the program, Terry.
Thank you very much.
We're going to talk briefly about the reality tour, which kicks off August 17th in Phoenix and makes its way to the Sellersville Theater here in Pennsylvania, which is a really cool place to see a show. Tell us what we can expect on this current tour that you're putting together.
Well, I'm a solo drum artist, and that usually means drum solo a la the last rock guy they saw do a drum solo. So I'm kind of difficult to explain. Most people, I think, would think of John Bonham or Ginger Baker, and probably that's the time in a concert where they would get up and use the restroom. And I don't do that. I have a very large drum set that's tuned to actual pitches and notes, and I play music on the drums, real melodies, while accompanying myself with a bass line with my feet. And it goes all over the place. Atmospheric sections and interesting sounds. There's a lot of space, slow things with beautiful melodies, fast things that are more rhythmic and exciting. A lot of orchestration and dynamics and melody, harmony, and rhythm all happening in my compositions. And that's what I do. My influences are sort of threefold. It's classically trained. I'm influenced by the forms and structures and the art and science of Western European classical music. I'm also into jazz, a la Joe Zawinul, Miles Davis, Weather Report, and all the musicians they played with. And in that respect, I don't mean, traditional jazz. I mean jazz that broke all the boundaries of jazz.
I love Billy Cobham.
Billy, of course, and John McLaughlin are in there, Chick Corea, all the guys who, played at those magical times in the late 60s and early 70s in New York. Hence, it's not easy to market because it's not just like, let's say, make up a heavy metal band like Angels of Death, let's say. You know what you're going to get with that. For me, it takes about a paragraph for people to understand what they might be getting.
Yeah, but with your resume, I would think, especially in the Philadelphia market, like sports fans, they worship the people that bring them the music and bring them the sports.
We say thank God for that.
They know, trust me, they're a very knowledgeable group of people. Just on the name Bozzio alone, they're going to make a lot of connection. And that would include the Frank Zappa days and your Jeff Beck days, and that list really goes on and on.
Things that I've done that I really love, probably top of the list would be ensemble I played in with Alan Holdsworth, Tony Levin, and Pat Mascalato. This is probably top of the list in terms of my idea of a band is unconditional acceptance of every member and their ideas. no forethought aside from that. You know, it's just three guys that I would never dream of telling what to play, and whatever they play, that's okay with me, because they're, in my mind, you know, real geniuses and people whose music I love. I'm working on releasing that stuff. Alan is a true genius and innovative and a wonderful person. We want to support Alan's family as he's passed, and trying to put together a nice deal for them, so they have something coming in from beyond. Next on the list, I'd say, would be Polytown with Nick Carn and David Torn. That was another, you know, unconditional acceptance band, and we just jammed things out and wrote and overdubbed in the studio, and I'm very proud of that. The Bozzio 11 Stevens stuff is some good stuff. You know, every character you change in an ensemble adds different flavors, so this was more rock, but you know, still some music I'm very proud of.
Right.
So, you know, on and on. There's a lot of great things, but yeah, and then there's a huge backlog of just, you know, you're trying to make a living and you're qualified and you use your skills to play some music that is not really in your heart, but you're capable of doing and putting your energy.
You're the nuts and bolts of a lot of music that's out there, and that's kind of what we try and do with this little interview that we do, is you know, get to know the people behind the scenes, so to speak. Although you obviously, you know, had a lot of solo stuff out on your own.
Yeah, for the last 25 years or so, I've been a solo drummer and a composer and you know, a graphic artist. I've been able to release some of my paintings and do some gallery shows, and I've also been able to tour the world and go all over with other drummers and drum festivals, and I work actively at drumchannel.com, where I have this dream job of interviewing the best drummers in the world and jamming with them. Yesterday, I played with Luis Conte and Walter Rodriguez, two masters of percussion. After shows like that, I say, okay, I can die now. You know? This is one of the best things I've said.
And that's no rehearsal.
Beautiful.
You just get together and do it. And
yeah, great drummers will make music with anyone. And so what I try and do is play a more African percussion type kit that even includes chromatic gongs and all kinds of congas, bongos, and weird sounds. And I've got it on a rolling rack. And, you know, the drums have these rope ties kind of in an X pattern, and it reminds you of the Flintstones cars. And everybody kind of around the shop there calls it Barney, like Barney Rubble.
right.
And it rolls in and it's ready to go almost immediately. And so if anybody happens to drop by DW or Drum Channel, I'm ready to rock. And, you know, my experience of hundreds of guys now I've done has been, no matter what style, where they come from, what their influences are, we make some music that's really deep, pretty much to the man. And then there's these stellar performances like with Alex Acuna or, you know, I mean, the list is too long to get into. There's so many great drummers I've played with, but it's always like a musical event. And I try and use sounds that they don't have on a traditional kit, so it's not two drummers playing the same sound, so that there's a lot more orchestrational variation in terms of colors and textures. And, you know, we just carve it out. And most drummers play in this way. We're comfortable improvising, and, you know, we listen and we make it work. It's not constrained by any commercial restrictions or guidelines or genre kind of bending in terms of, well, if you're going to play a Latin thing, it's got to be this Latin thing. No, it's like free. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I'm skimming through your Composer Series collection right now, and I'm just totally fascinated. I mean, that first track is just mind-blowing for me.
Thank you. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of an electronic thing.
It's called North 101.
North is my favorite direction. I live in Southern California. I was born in San Francisco, and as you know, that's a beautiful area, and my heart's still kind of up there. You know, every time I go home, I'm thinking, you know, North 101, and that's kind of the direction home, you know, in a metaphorical way. You know, I played kind of conjuring up Miles and Joe Zawinul on the keyboard part. You know, I'm not a keyboard player per se, but if you set up the keyboard to be monophonic, then it will kind of auto-correct. If you clam two notes together, it will pick one of them, and any note is okay with me. So originally, every title on there was just the date of the inception. Other pieces like Me, Jeff, and Tony. I was almost falling asleep one night, and I played those chords. Had like almost like a hospital tray over the bed, and you're just kind of halfway falling asleep and playing some chords, and it was out of time, and the phrasing was weird, and I thought, I can't change this. Then I played the piano part, and I thought of Tony and how deep that guy is. Tony Hymas is, genius classical composer and classical pianist, and
really
big influence on my life. Oh yeah. I mean, Tony, when we were doing the Jeff Beck album, Tony was up earlier than me and memorizing Mozart and Debussy Image for all his solo concerts. Stuff that he does, and that really was a turning point for me to get deeper into music and to read a lot and become self-taught. I tried to channel Jeff in the guitar solo, and I tried to channel Tony in the piano solo, and the whole thing came out like a Pink Floyd-ish dream with those guys expressing themselves.
Well, I highly recommend it. It's good driving music for me. I don't, maybe not for somebody else, but I haven't gotten to them yet. But I'm looking at now. I see OCD and ADD. I imagine they're going to be a little bit on the crazy side, or
yeah, they're definitely on the Zappa side.
That's what I was going to say.
You know, I suffer from both of those things. I thought they were appropriate for expressing the music.
Speaking of Frank, I saw on your website something about Zappanelli. Explain that.
Well, the founder of that festival in Bad Doberan in the former East Germany was arrested and spent 2 years in jail merely for the possession of a Frank Zappa album. But when he got out of jail and the wall fell, he formed a successful business. He's, fairly well off. And he started this Zappanelli thing with a caravan that sold some food and 3 people. And now it's 29 years, and it's a huge festival. It's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful town on the Baltic Sea, on the north coast of Germany. And it wasn't bombed, and there's some beautiful homes. And it's got a little steam train that runs up and down the village to where the festival grounds are. And it's become this massive festival, like a little vortex of Zappa land in the former East Germany, where Zappa never set foot. And there's a beautiful bus with him in the center of town. Yeah,
didn't know.
Yeah, great place, great people, great food, and wonderful host.
I'm jealous. Every time I have an interview with somebody that's been all around the world doing what they love, it just makes me jealous. Don't feel bad about that.
Yeah. Well, from my angle, there are a lot of incredible countries that have incredible goods and services and a way of living that is much easier than it is here in the United States. And a lot of the people who are saying, this kind of political jargon that's going on right now, they don't know what they're talking about because they've never been outside the United States.
I'm going to go back quite a few years now and pick your brain a little bit about your time with Frank Zappa. Just happened to be around the time that I started getting into Zappa and the Zoot Allures album.
Yeah.
Which is, out of all of his releases, before he died, he said, "Don't do anything to Zootsalor." Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure about that. I think that was more from the family. I think it was such an emotional tune after Frank had died that the family felt that way.
Oh, okay.
But, I know Dweezil and Ahmet, and, now that Gail and Frank have both passed, I'm one of the guys who they continue to ask to do projects with them. But yeah, Frank's music was dense and sometimes very ugly. He said sometimes you just can't write a chord ugly enough to express the way you feel. The B-side of that was Frank was capable of incredibly beautiful melodies. Music for a low-budget symphony orchestra is one of my favorite pieces that he wrote. And Zootalours, or Watermelon and Easter Hay, they're so emotional to those who have had a personal relationship with Frank that, it's hard to listen to those things without crying. So I think there was more of that going on rather than the words of Frank,
I came to appreciate the music. I mean, obviously you start out with the Cosmic Debris stuff and Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and things like that. And then, he was a little crazy on the Shake Your Booty album as far as the lyrics and titles and things are concerned. But he was always known for, I think a lot of people looked at Frank as a clown.
Yeah.
Not from a playing perspective, because he was brilliant. Just listening to that and seeing video of Zappa back in the day is just mind-boggling. And he assembles top-notch musicians around him, including yourself. Punky's Whips, that's where you get a chance to step out front, I guess, is a good term.
Well, having been there, I can explain anything. And I will say off the top of my head with entire sincerity, deepest sincerity, everything Frank said was the truth. Whether I wanted to believe it, whether I was too young to understand it, whether I was too naive to accept it, everything he said is the truth. And he was that kind of guy. And if you don't look deep enough or you don't have an experience to prove that to yourself, it might be difficult. But what Frank was a multi-talented artist. He was a humorist. He was a great guitar stylist. He was a composer. He was a band leader. He was a rock star. He was an arranger and a writer. If you read his interviews today, I mean, they should all be put in a book because everything he said was the truth and the truth of his experience. And he worked with his experience to blow things out of proportion, but there was a grain of truth at the center of that. So, for instance, Punky's Whips, I'm basically pre-Zappa, a jazz guy in San Francisco who has a classical training, and I come to play with Frank, and suddenly I'm in rock and roll land, groupies and everything else that goes along with it. There's no manual for any kind of fame. So everybody has to handle it and go through the crap of it their own way. And so for me, I was trying to, plug into this of, what I had become, which is some kind of a rock star in a month, right? Internationally known with credibility because of my affiliation with Frank Zappa.
Terry recently fell in love with a publicity photo of a boy named Punky Meadows, lead guitar player from a group called Angel. In the photograph, Punky was seen with a beautiful shiny hairdo in a semi-profile which emphasized the pooched out succulence of his insolent, pouting rictus, the sight of which drove the helpless young drummer mad with desire.
I can't stand the way he pouts, 'cause he might not be pouting for me.
Punky Meadows pouting for you? You bet, sailor.
You mean he's not pouting? He's not pouting for me?
I'm up at his house one time, and he had this 3-foot high by 3-foot wide wicker basket filled with rock journalist magazines that he did not buy. They just were sent to him. And there were some Japanese ones in there that had these full-colored pictures of everybody and their mother, all the Rolling Stones and the glam bands and whatever was happening in 1975. And, I stumble across this picture of Punky Meadows, and I show it to Frank, and we both laugh because it was like a beautiful hair Brecht ad on the back of a newspaper or a magazine in the 50s. And this was just a flawless, picture of a human being, with his pooched out lips and all those kind of things. And I was just like, oh my God, in shock. And so Frank took that and blew it out of proportion. Meanwhile, I have a couple of friends, and they were telling me about Punky and saying, oh man, he can drink a beer while he's playing with his left hand, and he's more fluid than Jeff Beck, and all these lines. So Frank is a guy who will take what's happening around the band and the crazy things that they experience and turn them into a little rock oratorio about a teenager's experience.
Punky, Punky, give me your lips to die on. I promise not to come in your mouth.
So I wrote lots of the lyrics. I just improvised them to crack Frank up, because that's kind of part of the job. You're always trying to see if you can stick in something witty that Frank will approve of and get a laugh out of, and then that becomes part of the music. So, that's how that happened. And Angel came to the show where we had a wall-sized picture of Punky up behind my drums that was revealed when we did that song. And they sat in the front row and laughed and, got a kick out of it. And no harm, no foul, just humor and a lot of great music in there at the same time.
Did anybody ever hear from him?
Sure. I think he's like a car salesman who owns a car dealership as his day job. But people say he's still playing, and he always sends a hello or something like that. And I've seen articles where he got the joke and was okay with it. Wow. They came backstage. They were totally cool. Nice people.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's because that thing is brutal.
He's been having a rap.
No shit.
That keeps the girls away. Skin Dude.
In 1972, you were in a rock musical, The Godspell, and I think one other one. And then 3 years later, you're touring with Frank Zappa. Was 72 the beginning for you as far as profession?
I would say more like 69, 70, because I'd been a rock drummer through high school. I took some lessons from some really good teachers, so I knew how to read, and I knew about the permutations of rhythm. I got in school band for my last year of high school and was able to, perform a concert with them before I left. Then I went directly into summer school at College of Marin and started majoring in music. And that's where it really started. And then at that time, I heard about an audition for Godspell, so we got the gig, and that show ran for 13 months. It helped me to move out of my parents' house and all this kind of stuff to get established on my own. But during that time in Godspell, where my heart was in jazz and becoming a better trap set drummer. So I jammed with people around town, started to get a name before I knew it. One day, I got 2 phone calls and got plugged into this sort of Latin scene. I auditioned for and got the gig with Azteca, and Eddie Henderson, the great trumpet player from Herbie Hancock, hired me for his band to play with another hero drummer, Eric Gravatt from the Weather Report, who had just settled in San Francisco. Wow. And from there, I started playing with Woody Shaw and Julian Priester and Joe Henderson and Eddie Henderson and Luis Dasca and Azteca. And I just became known as one of the better guys in town. So then Eddie used George Duke on his record, and George said to Eddie, Frank had been looking for drummers and couldn't find any in L.A. So I auditioned for Frank and amazingly got the gig and became, like I said before, world famous and with credibility because of my affiliation.
I ain't queer. Hey. I ain't gay.
For me, when the drum clinic thing stopped around 2008 with the economic crash, all the manufacturers could no longer support clinics and put artists out on the road. So, I just got a booking agent and took risks, and that seems to have paid off. And this is my 3rd American tour, and maybe it's close to 10 European tours, and I've been in Japan and done wonderful projects there. There's an appreciation and a payback financially that's way better in outside of America.
How about a little bit on Jeff Beck?
Jeff is just the guy who was touched by God, and God said, your hair will just stick up like this. You will inspire a generation of haircuts. And every time you touch the guitar, whether you know it or not, it will be the sweetest thing anybody's ever heard. And that's what I experienced. He's an intuitive, doesn't read music per se, but he plays notes that are not on the guitar. And he plays melodies on his whammy bar that are quantized. They're so in tune, it's ridiculous. And he plays harmonics and then plays melodies on the whammy bar. And everything the guy does is just very deep. You know, I'm sure he can't tell you how he does it, but I know from experience that God just touches some people, and they just do what is necessary to reach into other people's souls and pull them in. And Jeff is one of those guys.
Absolutely.
He's just undeniably one of the most fantastic and very funny, very cordial, very cool guy. That I hung in his house and drove his hot rods during the years I was with him. I don't have anything bad to say about the guy. He's just a genius in his own right and a wonderful person. A creative person can do not only one thing. For me, when my first tour with Zappa included Captain Beefheart, who was always sketching and drawing, and I thought, that looks like fun. And so I got some markers and some paper, and he started to encourage me, and I've been drawing abstract stuff and, caricatures ever since. And if you find something you love and you can share it with other people, I think that's the goal of any artist.
And it seems to be a pattern. Annie Haslam, Ian McLagan, the late, great Ian McLagan, they're all artists on the side, so to speak.
On a very deep level, every second is important, and you shouldn't use that to pressure yourself like you have to. But we are not taught that. Our school systems are developed by corporations to fill the roles they need in their corporate world, and nobody's taught from an early age you can do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
So, we only have a shadow of democracy here and true freedom.
Well, I mean, if you just read the biographies of a lot of the British superstars, they're assigned a school and told that they're meant to be a plumber and things like that, but they broke the mold and did what they wanted. And basically, when going to art school.
Art schools, and that was a result of the kind of baby boom thing that happened after World War II. And there was a lot of disenfranchised youth, and so they said, let's make these art schools. And so you have Mick Jagger and Mick Carr and so many of the Beatles all went to these art schools. And when you talk about art, anything goes. It's okay to be a murderer in art. It's not okay to be a real murderer, but you can kill in art or in music or in any creative expression. Some music is murderous, man. It's beautifully murderous. That's a great expression of the reality of our situation here in this dimension on this planet at this time. People don't know this stuff from an early enough age so that they can find their way and express themselves, And this is something in education that I feel is a controlled corporate thing, like, what's his name, bass player of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, right? He wrote about in The Wall. Yeah. This is all reality. Guys like him and guys like Zappa are telling the truth, and if you're too ignorant, you don't have an open mind, you're never going to get this, and you're never going to have the freedom I get to have. I live like a poor person, but I have a rich inner life, and I get to express myself, and I don't need to be paid to practice the drums, learn something new, to compose a piece of music, or to make a piece of art. I do it because I love it, and if somebody else loves it, then of course that makes me happy. It reinforces my path, but it's not necessary. If I have to work in a Starbucks, I'm still going to do the same things on my off time.
Well, you got to pay bills, though. I mean, you're not living in a hut somewhere.
Yeah, and that's just part of the game, I ask for twice as much as I need, and they'll give me half as much as I want, and maybe that's okay, and I get by. So and here I am, 67 years old. I still haven't learned how to play that game, and I get taken advantage of all the time. but I'm okay because I have me and my expression. And, you know, playing by yourself, that's something like nobody can take away from you. Once you've done that for a few years, you begin to trust that something will be there, your consistency will be there, and you know, you'll do good shows, and you'll be able to somehow be provided for so that you can continue to do what you love.
Tell us again what we can expect when you pull into Sellersville on September 4th.
Just one man and one lonely guy on the drums. And you're going to hear some beautiful, moody pieces that are very eclectic in different directions, that give you different effects of excitement or transcendence into worlds that only I know. Many friends say that it's like time traveling. After a 2-hour show, they feel like, 15 minutes went by or something.
I go to a lot of live shows. I like live music, but I also know a lot of people that could care less about music, and I don't know how they exist.
Well, once again, I think it's this ignorance and lack of understanding. I mean, I've had experiences like where I've done a solo performance in a drum clinic, and after the show, this farmer comes up to me in his overalls and one of those hats with the vents in the back and junk. And he says, I'm a farmer. I sit in the tractor all day and plow fields. He goes, I brought my grandson here because he's interested in drumming. He goes, I totally understand what you're doing. And the way you explained it, I totally understand too. And if this is a farmer who sits in a tractor all day, I have hope. Music is a metaphor for the universe that we live in. And people don't understand that on a very basic level. Every cell in our body understands this, and it's doing that. That's why wounds heal and, all this stuff. It's all vibrational. There is this fact in physics that scientists have discovered, and they're even going past that. So we need to know these things. And drummers should have the dignity to know that we are a part of this universe and reflecting the timekeeping and frequency-generating aspects of music. And, every kid who starts playing the drums should be taught that first.
I appreciate drummers from, the simplistic sides of, let's say, a Charlie Watts, right on up to the intricacies of Terry Bozzio.
Yeah, same with me, man. I love Charlie Watts. I wouldn't want to see the Rolling Stones with any other drummer. Same with Ringo and the Beatles.
Right.
They had a sonic personality that's very important, and it doesn't need to be complicated. That's a harmonic relationship between those guys. It shouldn't be messed with, and if you can find that, great. Now, on the other hand, the rest of us might have to practice and learn and, be able to play what other people want to make a living. I want to go further than just playing the drums. I want to make this a melodic and harmonic instrument, and that's my path.
Yeah, that old saying, you can't judge a book by a cover, but when you watch the Frank Zappa videos and Punky's Whips in particular, you got to wonder, but we all know it's entertainment. What we've heard today is a very intellectual, well-versed individual by the name of Terry Bozzio, and he will be appearing at Sellersville, ST94 Theater. Great place to see a show on September 4th. If you know Terry Bozzio from the Frank Zappa days and you thought that whole band of people were a bunch of perverted guys having fun making music, not the case. This guy is a well-educated dude.
Yeah, well, Frank was really a genius.
Yeah.
And, because he was quite spot on in many, many ways. What I know now, my musical taste and maturity, I would just love to back him up in a solo, because I wouldn't be as, busy and trying to prove myself and all those things that you do when you're young, because testosterone and whatever reasons you're making your way up, and you want to make sure that other people think you exist.
Yeah.
I think with my taste and credibility now, my maturity and experience, I could do a much better job of backing them up on a solo.
Enjoyed talking to you, Terry. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. The reality tour It starts August 17th out in Phoenix, and it slowly makes its way to the East Coast and up and down the East Coast from what I can see here. Tickets for most shows are available at Ticketmaster locally at the theaters where Terry will be performing. And that would include Sellersville. Go to st94.com and scroll down the page for the Terry Bozzio Show.
I'm looking forward.
Again, Terry Bozzio, a great drummer who's played with just about everybody. Awesome talking with you, Terry.
Same for me. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
That wraps up another edition of the Philly Soundcast. Be sure to like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Philly Soundcast. Check out our blog at phillysoundcast.wordpress.com. And of course, see all of the guests Doug Schaub and I interviewed at YouTube. Everything is archived there. If you have a question for any of the artists, Doug Schaub or myself, please email phillysoundcast@gmail.com. I'm Eddie Caiazzo, and along with Doug Schaub, we're telling the musical stories originating in and passing through the city of brotherly love on the Philly Soundcast. We'll talk to you next time.